Rome. You've heard the saying, it wasn't built in a day. Well, it didn't conquer the world by accident either. We're talking about a single city on the Italian peninsula that grew into one of the most powerful empires in all of human history. So, what was their secret? How did they pull it off?
Well, it wasn't just about luck, and it wasn't just about having a few brilliant generals. Rome's rise to power was a systematic construction. It was like they had a blueprint for an empire, and they followed it step by step. So today, we're going to break down that blueprint piece by piece.
All right, first up, the foundation. You know, every great building needs the right raw materials. And for Rome, that meant using its geography to its advantage and being incredibly smart about borrowing the best ideas from the cultures all around them.
I mean, just look at where Rome is on the map. It's sitting right on the Italian peninsula, smack dab in the middle of the Mediterranean. This spot wasn't just pretty, it was a strategic gold mine. It gave them the perfect launch pad for trade, for communication, and of course for military conquest in pretty much every direction.
But location was only half the battle. The Romans were absolute masters of what you might call smart borrowing. They didn't feel the need to reinvent the wheel. They just saw what worked for other people and perfected it. Greek gods? Cool, we'll take them, but we'll call Zeus Jupiter. The Greek alphabet? A fantastic starting point for our own Latin script. Greek architecture? We love it. We'll just build it bigger and even more grand.
And a perfect example of this is the Roman Forum. This was the buzzing, chaotic heart of every Roman city. But the idea itself, it came directly from the Greek agora, a central place for markets, politics, and social life. See, Rome's real genius wasn't just in conquering people, but in absorbing and upgrading their best ideas.
Okay, let's move on to the next piece of the blueprint, the social structure inside Rome itself. Roman society was basically a pressure cooker of inequality. And it was this constant tension that, believe it or not, actually fueled its political change and its ambition to expand.
This chart tells you almost everything you need to know. It was a tale of two cities, all in one. You had the patricians, this tiny elite, just 5%, who had all the money and all the power. And then you had everyone else, the plebeians, a staggering 95% of the population who did most of the work and, you guessed it, paid most of the taxes.
And the gap between these two groups, it was massive. The patricians were the nobles. They owned the vast majority of the land, they held all the top government and military jobs, and they kicked back in luxurious villas. Meanwhile, the plebeians were the engine of Rome, the farmers, the shopkeepers, the soldiers. They lived packed together in crowded, often dangerous apartment blocks.
And this right here gives you a feel for what life was like for that 95%. The streets were loud, they were packed, and they were the center of all commerce. It was a world away from the peaceful, sprawling villas of the patricians.
And we absolutely have to remember, below even the poorest plebeian, there was another huge group of people, the slaves. Most were captured in Rome's endless wars. They had zero rights and formed the absolute bottom of this very rigid social pyramid.
So, you have to ask, how on earth do you manage a society with such massive divisions? Well, you need a brilliant political operating system, and that is exactly what the Romans designed with their republic. Back in 509 BCE, the Romans did something truly revolutionary for the time. They got rid of their kings and set up a republic. The big idea here was that citizens, well, certain citizens anyway, had the power to elect their own leaders. In the ancient world, this was a radical, game-changing concept. And this is how their system worked. You had two consuls at the top, like co-presidents, who could veto each other's decisions. Then there was the powerful Senate, made up mostly of patricians, who controlled the money and advised the consuls. And finally, you had assemblies, which gave ordinary citizens something of a voice. It was this intricate system of checks and balances, all designed to make sure no single person or group could grab too much power. Now, a huge step forward came with the 12 tables. This was the first time Rome's laws were actually written down and put on display in the Forum for everyone to see. This was a massive deal because it established a principle we take for granted today that all citizens, whether you were a rich patrician or a poor plebeian, were protected by the same set of laws.
And if you're wondering why any of this ancient history matters, well, just look at this chart. An executive branch, a legislature with a senate, a written legal code, the idea of citizenship itself. The blueprint for the Roman Republic was a direct inspiration for the founders of many modern governments, including the United States. Its legacy is literally all around us today.
Okay, so a brilliant political system, the software, is great. But to actually build an empire, you need some serious muscle. So let's talk about the hardware that powered Rome's expansion, its incredible military machine.
One of Rome's single greatest innovations was creating a professional army. Think about it. These weren't just farmers who were called up to fight when needed. No, these were full-time, highly trained, incredibly disciplined soldiers. Their only job was to fight for Rome. This gave them a massive, massive advantage over pretty much all of their rivals.
And that army was just a masterpiece of organization. The main unit was the legion, a powerhouse of about 5,000 soldiers. But the real tactical genius was breaking it down into smaller, flexible groups called centuries with 80 men each. Every century was led by a centurion, one of the toughest, most experienced soldiers on the field. This structure made the Roman army both incredibly powerful and amazingly adaptable. And on top of being better organized, they also had better tech. We're talking about heavy-duty siege engines like the ballista, which could hurl giant stones to smash through walls, and the catapulta, which was basically a giant arrow-firing crossbow. This kind of advanced weaponry gave the Roman legions a devastating edge, especially when attacking fortified cities.
So let's recap. We have the cultural foundation, the social engine, the political software, and the military hardware. Now it's time to see how this incredible Roman machine performed when it was put to the ultimate test, the all-out fight for control of the Mediterranean.
And that test was called the Punic Wars. This wasn't just one war. It was a series of 3 brutal, epic conflicts that spanned over 100 years. It was Rome versus the other great power of the age, the mighty trading city of Carthage. This was a fight to the death for supremacy.
During the Second Punic War, Rome faced its greatest nightmare, the Carthaginian general Hannibal. In what is still one of the most incredible moves in military history, Hannibal marched his entire army, including war elephants, over the snowy Alps and right into Italy. He crushed Roman army after Roman army and brought the fight to the very gates of Rome.
But the Roman system didn't break. Their deep reserves of soldiers, their unshakable political will, and their army's ability to learn and adapt eventually wore Hannibal down. Rome pushed back, took the fight to Carthage's home turf, and finally defeated him. After a third and final war, they completely destroyed their rival. And just like that, with Carthage in ruins, Rome stood alone as the undisputed superpower of the Mediterranean. The Republic was now an empire in everything but name.
So there you have it. The blueprint was an unbelievable success. The Romans had built a system for conquest unlike anything the world had ever seen. But with all that power came a whole new set of problems. And that leads us to the final, critical question. Could the very system that was so perfect for building an empire actually survive the immense pressures of running one? Well, that's a story for another time.